So welcome to today's online day of meditation. It is, today is Saturday, the 23rd of March, 2024, in relative time. Today, as I announced in my emails, I'd like to focus on joy. And there's lots of ways we can cultivate joy. And I'll give a Dharma talk at 11 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time about just about joy and how we can cultivate it. And before that, I'll invite you to a couple of meditation practices. Usually we do 2 meditation practices, and I was thinking, which ones will we do? And I'm thinking that I'd like to invite you to a practice on joy or mudita as a divine abode. Probably do that one first, because it's always good to do a practice of divine abode before we embark on any meditation. Actually, it's even 5 minutes of a divine abode is fantastic between all meditation practices, before all meditation practices, because it not only does it give us a kind of an expansive state of consciousness, which is really great for concentration, but it also is just a great way to feel and be and relate to oneself. So oneself, not oneselves. I guess we could say we have multiple selves. Excuse me, I'm just going to turn my phone off. So the first meditation will be mudita. And in it, I'll invite you to rouse joy somehow, like by thinking about it or reflecting on what brings joy to your heart. And if you can't think that, at least think of someone who is joyous and happy, so that their joy becomes infectious. And whatever way is possible for you, you rouse a sense of joy. Sometimes joy, I mean, this mudita is often called appreciative joy. I think some ways I rouse mudita is by appreciating people, like thinking about something that they've done really well. And in the talk, I'll talk about how in a retreat I used to use my partner as the stimulator for appreciative joy. So we use with this practice, what we do is we will often use something to kindle this quality. So it's like like we're kindling a fire. You know how you kindle a fire? You start with something little, a few leaves, a bit of paper or something like that, and you light it up, and it just kind of starts to starts with the flames, and then it gradually catches on into the bigger sticks and then the logs and so on. There's something called kindling, and I don't know the word in Pali. I'll try to look it up one day. But that word I got from Ajahn Brahm when I was reading one of his books, and it's about kindling this quality. So on this retreat that I was on, the way I kindled this quality was I reflected on my partner and how ethically, um, she has very good ethical integrity, spotless. I mean, she's really admirable in that, and she's admirable in the way she works hard and cares for people. She cares for a lot of people and family and her clients. She's a health worker. She's a speech pathologist, and I know she cares for me. And though she doesn't do lunches for me these days because she's a bit busy, she spent years just making my lunch, for example, because I was running off to work, and she'd make a lunch just out of the generosity of her heart. So just thinking of that makes me feel kind of appreciation and gratitude, and a joy arises in my heart. What we can do with mudita is allow that joy to arise in the heart by using whatever kindling we can use, And in this case, it's kind of empathetic joy. It's like the joy with another's joy. And that's the way it's traditionally described in the Buddhist teachings. So whatever way we can do it, we do it, and then we let go of the concept. And then we focus on the experience, the felt sense of this experience. I'm putting my hand around my heart. You probably can't see that, but that's where we feel it. That's where we feel the heart qualities. We feel them in our heart. We feel them in our heart center. I guess the same place where the physical heart is, but it's not the physical heart. It's the heart center. It's the emotional center, and it's that chakra. It's the fourth chakra, if you want to think in terms of energy, energy vibrations, and so on. So we kindle it. We kindle this heartfelt quality. We feel it. We feel it, but we perceive the sign of it. We perceive how we recognize appreciative joy or appreciative of joy in general. And then we hone in on it and we nourish it. And we nourish it with our gentle and kindly attention. And here we start to dip into those 5 jhana factors: initial application, sustained application, um, um, joy or piety, happiness or sukha, and then unification of mind. So this experience, once we have the sign of it, we keep bringing our attention back to him, but it's not a forced bringing back. It's just this gentle bringing back. It's like we're planting our attention there, and it's a gentle and soft attention. And it's just coming back, and coming back. And the more we do that, the more we kind of get, how can I describe it? We start to become absorbed into it. So there's no, the effort drops away. The effort to bring it back drops away because it's so nice to focus on. And then it kind of has its own momentum. We start to let go of a lot of effort in doing this, and it just starts to have its own momentum, and we let it kind of grow. We let it grow, and we let it spread from our hearts and start to pervade our body and pervade our being. And it's called a boundless state. These are called divine abodes, but they're also called the boundless divine abodes. They're boundless in the sense that the barriers between self and others disappear. And also, they're boundless in the sense that they're infinitely spacious. There seems to be no limits to their bounds. In Tibetan Buddhism, I don't know what the word is in Tibetan Buddhism, but often you'll hear Tibetan Mahayana Buddhists talk about these qualities as immeasurable. Immeasurable because they have no limit. So what we can do at this point in the practice is we can the way it feels is like we expand and we radiate this quality out beyond the boundaries of our body and beyond the boundaries of our sense of ourselves. And then we notice the boundaries start to dissolve away and we merge in this state of boundlessness and this divine abode. And then if there are any other beings, and this is also a state of non-duality, by the way. I mean, sometimes they don't call it non-duality in Theravadan Buddhism. It's called, what is it called? It's another term. I've just forgotten the term at the moment, but it means boundless. There is a term called appamana in Pali. It means this kind of spacious boundlessness. And I'm just trying to remember the word, where it translates as non-concoctability. In other words, we don't construct boundaries. We don't construct a dualistic world. We, we abide in this state of consciousness, which is boundless. Trying to remember the Pali word, but I can't remember. I'll get it during the break, definitely. But the translation of the Pali word is non-concoctability, meaning we don't concoct things. For those of you who know what signlessness means, it's kind of like signlessness. We're not feeding into the concepts about, concepts of duality, and we're just abiding in that non-concoctability, and which, latter Buddhist practitioners and other spiritual approaches, kind of more modern day spiritual approaches, will call non-duality. Okay, so that's the first meditation. And the second meditation, I thought that we'd emulate the jhanas. I'm not expecting us to achieve the first four jhanas, in a morning session. It's not this. It's not an expectation, and also the jhanas, which are states of high concentration, highly refined concentrations. They're all altered states of consciousness. Actually, they're different than our normal state of consciousness. They're altered states of consciousness, and they're highly refined and highly refined and beautiful states, actually. So there are sometimes they're called. There's sometimes the first four jhanas are called the jhanas, and the next four sometimes they're called absorptions. So, but sometimes it's called sometimes it's described. Sorry, get yourself straight, Malcolm. Sometimes the jhanas are described as 8 jhanas. 4 of them are called rupa jhanas, which means they're highly states of they're states of concentration that have materiality. They're a material. We feel them materially. We feel them in their body. These first four jhanas. So they're called rupa jhanas or jhanas of form. The next 4, which are sometimes called absorptions, are arupa jhanas, meaning that they are non-material. They're only perceived or they're only experienced with mentality. We don't actually feel them in our body. We kind of transcend our body, if that makes sense. So though there's some controversy about this, because you'll read in different texts, in later Buddhist texts, that one needs to transcend one's body, or that even for the first jhana. But if you look in the suttas, there's one sutta that's described as how was it described? It's described as a mindfulness of body sutta. I can't remember the name of it. I'll bring it up again in the break. But it describes all sorts of practices that are focused on the body, and it includes the first 4 jhanas. Wow, isn't that amazing? So that we can experience the first 4 jhanas in our body. So what I'll be inviting you to is to emulate these features of the jhanas, the features of these jhanas. And the features of the feature of the first jhana is something called piety, or joy. And this experience is felt like pervading through our body. It arises from gladness, which we could say is like spiritual pleasure. It arises from seclusion. It arises when we subdue and let go of the hindrances. And it's a kind of bubbly, energetic feeling throughout the whole body. Joy. Sometimes it's called rapture. It's called piety. And that's a feature of the first jhana, according to the sutras. The way it's described is as if we have flakes of soap and a bit of moisture with those flakes of soap, and we're massaging them into a ball. The flakes of soap eventually kind of become merge within the whole ball, if that makes sense. So it like becomes a ball, but there's a merging of those separate flakes into one, or kind of unified through our massaging of it. That's the analogy used for that first jhana in regards to piety or joy. The feature of the second jhana is sukha, which means happiness. And in this respect, it's a much lighter experience. It's a much more refined experience than joy. The joy of piety is kind of bubbly and energetic and uplifting. And this is a more refined experience. It is like a kind of lightheartedness, a buoyancy of heart. I say heart because I tend to experience it more centered around my heart, but then it pervades throughout one's whole body, whole being. And the analogy that the Buddha used for this one was as if there's a warm pond or a pool of water and there's a cool spring underneath. This is in a hot climate, cool spring, and the water from the cool spring starts to come up into that hot pool or warm pool and pervade the warm pool with coolness. A lovely analogy. So it's, and I think it actually we experience it like that. It's kind of, you're sitting and you're turning to this more refined aspect of sukha, and you're noticing this beautiful lightness coming throughout your body, throughout your being. So that's the second jhana. The third jhana, it's even more refined than that, and it's described as contentment, which is a mix of happiness and equanimity. By this time, the grossness, if you can call it this, the grossness of joy is nowhere to be found. And there's just a more refined kind of equanimity and mixed with happiness, which results in a sense of contentment. The analogy the Buddha used for this one was as if a whole lotus plant is submerged into a pond, and the lotus plant is saturated with water completely. And this is the analogy about a sense of saturation with contentment. Okay. And the fourth jhana, and I'm only going to be talking about the rupa jhanas, or the jhanas of form. The fourth jhana, its feature is equanimity. And this is so refined that it isn't experienced as pleasant or painful. It's just deeply unshaken, deeply peaceful, deeply quiet, deeply still. And even the word peace, I don't know if that really describes it. Not that I'm an adept with all these practices. I'm talking about understanding them and relating to them and perceiving them in some ways where they actually lead to these states. It's like it's not faking it until you make it, but it's like if you can distinguish these qualities, it's like your mind sort of goes into them, becomes absorbed into them, and they actually grow. It's like having something to attend to, that it actually starts to manifest. It may not manifest to the degree that is described in the path of purification or even in the sutras, but it's still, to the level it does manifest, is really wonderful and hopeful and helpful. So this fourth jhana, equanimity, unshakability, stillness, quietude, not wavering in terms of joy or even happiness. It's just completely peaceful. There's no unpleasantness as well. There's just this stability of mind. The analogy that's used is as if a person is covered completely with a cloth, like a sheet, and the sheet's illuminating. With this one, there's like the sheet is illuminating, so there's a kind of a bright, luminous quality about it. And in my mind, this kind of describes a sense of insulation from the unpleasant and pleasant ups and downs of our lives, the vicissitudes of our lives. There's an insulation from it, like a distance from it, a space from it, at the same time as being completely engaged with it in the sense of a, a, a broad and luminous awareness, bright awareness. So these are the 4 jhanas, and I'll invite you to practice them. And wonderful if you achieve the levels that that's either described in the Visuddhimagga or the Path of Purification, the later texts. And that's wonderful if that happens. I will expect that even if you are adept with these practices, probably it takes more than just 15 minutes of meditation to do that. Sorry, I'll say this: people who are adept get very skilled about entering and exiting these particular levels of jhanas. By the way, they're very skilled at it. So, but I will invite you to. I'll invite you to relax. We might hook into the first practices, the first couple of steps of mindfulness of breathing, in a way where we relax our body, calm our minds, and become concentrated. And I invite you to pay attention to the breathing, wherever it's suitable for you. And if it's okay at the nose tip, that's where I'll invite you to pay attention. So you get very, very close, very refined. And then after a while, notice spiritual pleasure. Notice wherever you experience pleasure. On a spiritual level, spiritual pleasure is different than hedonic pleasure. Spiritual pleasure is the sort of pleasure that arises from concentration and also from practicing on the path. So with hedonic pleasure, we risk getting attached and craving. With spiritual pleasure, we use that as a stepping stone to get more concentrated. It's easy to focus on spiritual pleasure. It's easy for our attention to come composed around spiritual pleasure. So when we do that, we might notice some joy then arise. So I'll invite you to notice joy. And even if it doesn't arise, imagine that it's arising. And sometimes you can bring something to mind that brings joy to your heart. And then it'll kind of trigger that to have this experience of joy arising, or piety. And then I'll invite you to be open to sukha, or happiness, and contentment, and then the deep peace of equanimity. And if you just want to stay with joy, that's fine. That's the theme of today. And if you want to go further, that's great, fantastic as well. So thanks very much. That's a bit of an explanation about today's events and meditations. As usual, for anybody who hasn't been here before, on this day, what we do is we usually have 2 guided meditations, and then hopefully 1 silent meditation, even if it's short, before we break at about 20 to 11, 20 minutes before the hour, Australian Eastern Daylight Time, 11 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time. 20 minutes to 11. So we break for a cup of tea or um, move our bodies or do whatever we need to do. Then you're invited to come back at 11 o'clock, Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and I'll give a talk. For some of you, it'll be a talk that you've heard before. It's a little bit of a repeat of a talk involving joy that I gave on the last retreat, which was only a couple of days ago. And another, it's also for those of you at the Kuan Yin Center a couple of weeks ago, it's a repeat of that talk with a bit more detail. I gave a 20-minute talk there. This one will probably be more like about 50 minutes, I'd say. 50 minutes to an hour. Okay. So any questions? Of course, feel free to go to move your body, go to the loo if you need. And if you just remember that if you turn to keep your microphones turned off, because if you turn them on, we start to hear all sorts of things coming over the recording. And also, often what happens is your image starts to come into the recording as well. So just to avoid that, please keep your microphones off until you want to ask a question or make a comment a bit later in the day. Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to turn this recording off now.